I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传习鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。
We're asking, what is the advanced practice of the Tao? What is an advanced lesson of the Tao? Usually, people will say, okay, everything that you have talked about, the unattached action, the tranquility, and so forth, I got it. I get it. I understand. Great. What's next? What do I do? What's level 2? I'm done with Tao 101. Actually, Alex, you had asked that question, if you recall. So, and there is actually a more elaborate answer that I can provide. The advanced levels of the Tao is, here's how I can describe it. It's just as simple as Tao 101, as the basics, but it's like 10 times more difficult. The reason why it's 10 times more difficult is simple, because the advanced levels of the Tao require that you put everything that you have learned into actual practice. So there's a whole bunch of things involved. I really haven't met too many people who can do them all. Example, at the basic level, we talk about letting go of clutter. At the advanced level, you really have to let go of clutter. You really have to look at everything that you own and say, do I really need this? Okay, donate. So that is something that people will continue to put off. I know because I have experienced that myself. Another item that's also at the advanced level that's very difficult to do is to not complain. And now, simple when I talk about it, but suppose you actually try to do it. When I talk to my wife, she says that whenever she has a conversation, maybe a telephone call with her girlfriends, 99% of the time is involved in some kind of complaint. Whether it's the boyfriend or the husband or the job or this or that, people are complaining all the time, maybe without realizing that they are complaining. The advanced levels of the Tao is to stop doing that. Now, it's not, I brought up the issue of my wife talking to her girlfriends. I don't want to make it seem like it's only the ladies that engage in that. If you listen to the conversation of us guys, especially here in Southern California, like when the topic of the Lakers come up, it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And then we talk about it, and then we complain about this player and that player and so forth, complaints. So are you able to stop complaining? That is so difficult. In the Tao, from the Tao perspective, there's a couple of perspectives on that. Before I talk about those, let me just mention that The Complaint-Free World is a best-selling book, and I find that it's very valuable, it's very helpful. But that's written by a Christian pastor. If you want to hear more of a Tao perspective, I'd be happy to provide that to you as well. Either way, you get to the end result, which is a whole lot less complaints in your life and a whole lot less negative energy. From the Tao perspective, you can think about all the things that we complain about in roughly 2 categories. Category number 1 are the things that are external to you. This includes the weather, the economy, annoying people, other people who do things that just get under your skin that you absolutely cannot stand. Okay? The commonality of all of these subcategories in that general category is that there's nothing we can do about them. Nothing you can do about the weather. There's nothing you can do about economy for the entire world. There's nothing you can do about how other people are, how they think, what they choose to do, etc. Therefore, complaining about them will not actually make any difference, will not move the needle in any meaningful way. Therefore, it's a waste of energy. You will be far better served by thinking about what you can change. Oh, the economy is not doing so well. Instead of blaming the government, instead of blaming external entities over which you have no control, your energy can serve you better by thinking about how can I open up more streams of income? How can I better my situation? So category number one, no need to complain. Category number two are the things that you can change, things that are within your power to affect, to influence about your life. So so one particular Christian pastor, not the gentleman who wrote the book Complaint-Free World. Oh, actually, it is him. he says he likes to tell a story about how two construction workers are having lunch together, and one of the construction workers will pull out his lunchbox, open up the lunchbox, pull out a sandwich and say, "Oh, grilled chicken sandwich, oh my goodness, that again." So he keeps doing that day after day. The next day, he opens up his lunchbox, pulls out the sandwich, "Oh, grilled chicken sandwich, oh, God." So the other construction worker says, "Well, why don't you just get your wife to make something else for you? Maybe a grilled cheese sandwich, maybe turkey, maybe ham sandwich, something else other than the grilled chicken." And the construction worker says, "Well, what's my wife got to do with it? I made the sandwich myself." So the point from the pastor is that if you're the guy that makes the sandwich yourself, there's no point to complain about it. Just make a different sandwich. So it's the same. That applies to everything in that general category number two. Instead of complaining about it, do something differently. Then you have no more cause to complain. So easy when I talk about it like that. Not so easy when we actually try to implement that as a plan in life. Therefore, it belongs in the advanced level of the Tao practice. There is a lot more to it, so because it was asked just this morning, I did not prepare a slide to summarize everything about the advanced practice. I will do that next time. The other thing that I mentioned previously, people have also become very interested to find out more about, and that is the advanced practices of the Tao. What does that entail? What's included? And why engage in it? So I mentioned that one of those things is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness practice can include quite a few different elements. Yoga being one of them. Mindful yoga is being practiced by many. And the other one, probably the most common form of mindfulness practice is meditation. So here, first, I want to share this with you that toward the end of 2014, I came across this particular study from Harvard University that shows meditation doesn't just de-stress. It doesn't just help you relax. MRI scans or control groups after 8 weeks of practice on meditation shows definitively that those who have had the meditative practice for half an hour every day for 8 weeks, for 2 months, they actually become more intelligent. They measurably become more intelligent. The amount of gray matter increases. So I was very interested in this particular result because I have seen this happen firsthand. And this is about my friend, a friend of mine who used to, when he lived here in Southern California, he used to come here to this meeting all the time, so I knew him quite well. Later on, he decided to move to Thailand, and that's where he lived for many years, and I lost contact with him. But I reestablished contact with him in the recent past, and to hear about his adventures in Thailand, for me, was amazing. Because what he said was that he's able to support himself living over there. And the way he's able to do that is because he developed an app, and I believe it's for iOS as well as Android. He developed this mobile app that many people are downloading to help them learn the Thai language. What a great idea. But then, what a big surprise for me, because I had known him before for several years, and I never once pegged him as a programmer. So, having had a programming background, I knew what a rigorous discipline programming can be. There's reams of technical documentation to go through, and I've never got into mobile app programming, but I've looked at the documentation. I know the sheer amount of information that you have to absorb, just to get started. It's not easy. It's not a lightweight undertaking, to say the least. So I was surprised that he could do it. He seemed like a completely different person. And he said that the most important thing for him was his daily practice of meditation. He does more than half an hour a day. He does like an hour. So then I thought, well, here's a real life example where someone literally has transformed his abilities to a higher level through the practice of meditation. So then, because I was so intrigued, I increased the amount of meditation that I did every day. So previously, what I had done was to spend about 10 minutes every day, shortly after waking up, in just a meditative state. Now, 10 minutes is not a very long time. Looking at this particular research paper, I realized that perhaps I should lengthen the amount of time. So I did that. I began to reap more of the benefits that I had before. There's the relaxation, there's the de-stressing, no doubt about that. But I also noticed a clarifying effect. So the next part I'll tell you is more technical in nature. I know many people who are listening in today are not technical, so just gloss over the parts that gets too detailed, but just grab onto the overall idea. And that is, the overall idea is this. Having more gray matter at your disposal, having more intelligence at your disposal, it changes everything. It changes you in every conceivable way, because your intelligence is what you use to do absolutely everything in your life. It means being able to solve tougher problems. It means having insights where you did not have insights before. It means having the ability to organize something, organize a mess that would have caused you previously just to give up in frustration and in confusion. With greater intelligence, you can handle that problem of organization a whole lot better. You also become far more creative. So it's a game changer, literally. So back in the 80s, in 1984, a major event in the world of personal computing was the introduction of the original Macintosh. So some of you guys are not old enough to remember that. That's okay. Some of you guys were in diapers, perhaps not even born yet. But some of you, because we have all different age ranges in our meeting, I know some of you do recall the original Apple Macintosh commercial followed by announcement, too much fanfare. So today, everybody takes the mouse for granted. Back in those days, it was just an amazing sight to behold. And it was a trip originally to see that something that I move over here on the desk translates to that exact movement on the screen. That was interesting. And fonts, typefaces could be italicized, could be bolded right on the screen. It could be in different sizes, could be big or small. That was amazing. So the original Mac, primitive by today's standards, back in those days, was just an incredible piece of engineering. So one of the programs that I found very interesting was Mac Paint. That's the original painting program. Today in Windows, we have Paintbrush. It's really the same thing. It all originated from a long time ago, back in 1984, on the original Mac. And the programmer for Mac Paint, his name was Bill Atkinson. So this was the time that I was going through computer science, learning programming. I became interested in the problem of compression. So back in those days, all data was stored on floppy disks, and the storage capacity of floppy disks were, by today's standards, extremely limited, 720K, and doubling that, you get high-density floppy disks, 1.44 megabytes. That was amazing, but today, all of us can potentially carry around multiple gigabytes of storage in just a tiny little USB keychain. That would have taken a room full of floppy disks to store. So it's incredible how far things have come. But because storage was so limited back in those days, you had to think about compression. You had to store data in the most efficient way possible. So I became interested in that back in 1984. I studied the topic, and I found a the form of compression used in MacPaint to be very easy to understand. It's called RLE. It's run length encoding. Don't worry about it if this is not familiar. It just means that the program is looking at a whole bunch of bytes, and when it sees the bytes, the dots are repeating itself many times. For instance, for a big white space, it'll store just the value, the value for the color white, and the number of times it's repeated. So it doesn't have to literally store that many. It has to store just the compressed version of it. I found this really easy to understand, and I wrote a program to read my paint pictures, and worked great. Got it working on the IBM PC. I had a lot of fun with that. Had a lot of fun programming with that. And then I hit a wall. Run length encoding was easy, but there was something else that was better than run length encoding. It was, the technical name for that was LZW compression, and that's it's basically the surname of the people that put out the paper that described how the algorithm works. So don't worry about what that is. LZW is what we currently use in zip. Zip files are all done with LZW, so it's a very good, very robust kind of compression. So I wanted to learn this kind of compression, so I got myself, I got the paper that describes the algorithm, thinking if I understand it, I can implement that. I read that paper only halfway, and then real life intervened. So I entered the workforce, became a technical person, working at this technical job and that job, and I became much too busy to indulge in my old hobby of programming. So I never got through that paper. I never understood how the algorithm worked. And it always seemed like a challenge to me, but I had no more time to think about it. I discovered that in the world of the technology, managing people was actually more challenging than programming computers. Computers will do what you tell it to do. People don't. People are contrary, people are ornery, people have issues, have problems. So I got into more the management track, and that's what's been going on for the last 20, 30 years. I've just been on that nonstop. So I never revisited the issue of LZW again. Now, the darndest thing is that I wasn't even thinking about it, but after meditating for just a few weeks in precisely the way prescribed by the Harvard University study, it just came to me how LZW works in my head. Like, oh, of course. Oh, that's easy. It's a dictionary approach. You go through a whole bunch of bytes. You begin to assemble a dictionary of this particular byte pattern and how many times it reoccurs. And I figured out at the same time, it was just a flash of insight. I knew how I would do it to process text documents. I would use the space as a delimiter, and then I would create a different version for arbitrary binary type files like pictures, and then that version can also be used for text files, and it goes on and on. The main important issue is that suddenly I got smarter, okay, out of nowhere, and it's because of the increase of gray matter in my brain. So I want to ask you to think about what that would mean for you. You basically create a better version of yourself. You still think like you do. You still feel like you do. Only you can think and feel a whole lot better than you could before. It's the best version of you imaginable. So think about that to be able to relax, de-stress, but also build on your intelligence so you optimize yourself, become the best version of you possible. I think that's pretty darn attractive, and I want to urge you to look into that, look into the research, look into setting up a regimen for yourself, because I would love it if everyone listening to this can become the best version of themselves. And there's actually, and if you are interested in that, if you're interested in improving yourself in that way, I have even more of a suggestion. There's another topic called intermittent fasting. There's a couple of documentaries on that. There's websites that describe it. But let me explain what it is. For the longest time, based on a UCLA study, people have known that calorie restriction was a surefire way to increase longevity in mammals, like mice. So this is easily repeatable. By having the mice consume less calories per day, they can lengthen the lifespan of the mice versus the control group that ate as much as it wanted. The ones that were on calorie restriction could increase their lifespans 20% at least up to 50%. For human beings, it would mean a lifespan of something that's well over 100. We do have people that live to over 100 today, just not that many. But there's already a group of people that are on this calorie restriction. Some of them get really into it. They have like a little scale on their table and they measure every bit of food that they consume. And they focus on consuming nutrient-rich foods that don't have a lot of calories. However, let me say this. If you have actually tried it, it's a very difficult lifestyle to follow because you're going to be passing the streets, you're going to be passing by the hamburger stand, and you're going to be looking longingly at the double-decker, Wow, I used to have that, I'm probably not speaking to all the vegetarians and vegans in the group, but the people who are non-vegetarians, non-vegans, you guys know probably what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's Paris Hilton with Burger King Whopper. She's biting down on it, and there's all kinds of juice coming out of it. Okay, so it's a difficult lifestyle to follow because you have to restrict yourself so much. You have to practice that self-denial so much. Now, newer studies after that have discovered that if you do intermittent fasting, it actually has the same benefits, but it's a lot easier to follow. All it means is that you have alternate days where you consume very little, and the standard is to practice limiting yourself to like 600 calories or less, and then the next day, have whatever you want. Have a buffet. Okay? You will still gain the benefits of calorie-restrictive diet, including weight loss. And you will think, well, but wait a minute, every other day I have all this food. Well, it actually doesn't matter. The alternate days of intermittent fasting will make sure that you process that food correctly, you will still lose weight. And overall, your calorie consumption will be less than it was before, even though you feel like you're picking out every other day. So the other surprising finding of calorie restriction is that whenever they have put mammals under this condition, they analyzed the neural structure, the brain of the mammals, lab mice, lab rats, and they discovered that there's an increase of neural activity. There's an increase of intelligence as well. So in the case of lab mice, it means that they can navigate maze far faster, far more effectively, and far more efficiently than before. In human beings, it means a similar thing as when they meditate, which is that you become smarter, more creative, you become a better version of yourself. So in terms of evolutionary biology, it actually makes a lot of sense. Because if you think about primitive humans from, let's just say, 1 million years ago, intermittent fasting was actually the way most people were. It was feast or famine. Before agricultural activities became known to human beings, people had to hunt, forage, scavenge, whatever they could. Sometimes they find a lot. Other times they go for days without a whole lot of food. So they had de facto intermittent fasting. And when they were going hungry, it was very necessary for them to be smarter about finding their next meal, to be able to navigate the maze of early, primitive human environment, jungle, so to speak. So natural selection saw to it that the people who were able to increase intelligence during the times of fasting, during the times of no food, were the ones that were much more likely to survive. So today, we all still have that trait. So if you look into intermittent fasting, you can probably combine that with the meditative practice to boost yourself even more. One last thing to mention is that if you talk to a lot of people who become vegetarians or vegans, they will actually describe a similar thing in that their minds become clearer. They can clear up their thinking a lot more than before. They can feel more compassion, they can feel more at peace, etc. There's an internet blogger that talks about how he never was a vegetarian, never thought about becoming a vegetarian, but then decided to investigate. He decided to give it like a 60-day trial. And what he discovered was a similar thing, that he's a programmer as well, this particular blogger. He's able to solve more difficult problems than he could before, and he could solve them faster. So the way that works is yet a different mechanism. It's not the survival mechanism of intermittent fasting. It is not the gray matter increasing mechanism of meditation. It's a different thing again. So the observation is that whenever you consume food that has a lot of animal fat, the aforementioned hamburger being one example, maybe meatloaf, maybe steak, all of those have animal fats that deposit themselves in your bloodstream, in your blood vessels. Now, it doesn't really care where it deposits itself. It'll put itself in every possible place in your body, and the circulation in your body, the circulation of blood, will make sure that the molecules of that animal fat goes everywhere, including the thinnest of your blood vessels. So for cardiovascular blood vessels that accumulate a lot of the animal fat, you end up with heart disease. That's something that all of us know about. But for the smaller blood vessels, the ones that feed the brain with nutrients and oxygen, those actually have an effect as well. The effect of any particular blood vessel is tiny, imperceptible, because there are so many blood vessels that feed the brain with oxygen and nutrients. There's an overall macroscopic effect. And when you reduce the amount of animal fats, you start to eliminate them from your body. When you clean yourself out, you actually clean yourself out everywhere, okay? In the larger blood vessels, in the tiny blood vessels, everywhere in your body. And that's the reason why people who have gone on that for at least a couple of months, they report feeling better, and they report thinking clearer. That's the reason. So if you want to, you can actually combine all three recommendations, and then you will be amazing. You will become like a super villain, menacing the whole world. So I would suggest doing a search on Harvard Meditation Study or intermittent fasting to get more information on that. Information is easily available to anyone who wants to look at them. And I think you owe it to yourself to at least investigate the possibility that perhaps there's a way for you to become an even better you than you are already.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架规则是一鞠躬，接班一鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.
Participate in the Tao meeting by joining us online. For information, go to taoism.net/Tao